Works.
So, Sarah, do you want to get us started?
Yes, I can go ahead and do that.
Awesome.
So welcome everyone to the, as you heard in the opening, the first ever virtual Farm to Plate gathering. So apologies in advance if anything's a little clunky. I am Sarah Danley and I'm the Farm to Plate Network Manager at Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. So Becca is the facilitator for the section and I'll introduce her in a second. But before we get started, I just want to quickly touch base on a few of the technical logistics. So please be sure your Zoom name reflects your first and last name, pronouns, and place of work if applicable. Please remain muted unless called upon or engaging in breakout room conversations. So you can use the raise hand feature to let the host know that you would like to speak. We may also call on you, and you can also type your question or comment into the chat feature at any point throughout the presentation. But other than that, please keep your microphone muted. As with any session, in person or virtual, please do not interrupt others. Please come to the conversation from a place of respect. Please know that these sessions are being recorded and will be shared on our website following the gathering. And I'm about to put a link into the chat for the gathering website, which in addition to the agenda PDF that you should have received, has all of the links for all of the sessions. And with that said, I will turn things over to Becca.
Hi, everybody. This is really exciting. I have, I guess, just to add to the technical caveat, I have never facilitated a large Zoom meeting, much less one with 55 participants. So we have some plans to make this session fruitful and interactive. Sarah Danley and Jenny Porter helped me figure out some ways that we could switch it up a little bit here and there. So we're going to be using some fun software, and I hope everything will go smoothly and we'll have some good conversations. So as I said, my name is Becca. I work at the Jobs Fund as the Farm to Plate Strategic Plan Project Coordinator and Editor. But I'm facilitating this session because I am the lead author on the food security brief. Hold on, I'm going to hide myself here. What's going on?
Becca, it looks like you might also have a red mark on your Zoom screen.
I know, something weird happened. I don't know. Oh, I see what's happening. All right. I don't know why that's happening, the red mark. If anyone has any ideas.
Why don't you just go ahead and I'll see if I have the power.
Aha, no, I figured it out. Okay. So these are the breakout session speaking guidelines, which I think Sarah was supposed to go over. Speak from your own perspective, not for others. Stay in a place of curiosity and learning. Avoid making generalizations. Account for the impact we have on others with what we say and how we say it. And do not interrupt or speak over others. So I'll just talk a little bit about what we're going to do in this session, which is the best session. So our hope with the session is to fill everyone in on what's been happening with planning for food security, farm viability, and food access within the strategic planning process, and then to start diving in to plan our way forward together. So I'm going to talk about the development process for the strategic plan just pretty quickly. Jake touched on it in his opening remarks, but maybe some people weren't there, and also it could be a time for questions. I'm going to dive into the relevant topic briefs for food security and food access. We'll have some time for questions there. Then we're going to do an exercise together where we prioritize the recommendations from the brief, which we could also think of as the strategies that the briefs recommend on these topics for us all to do in the next 10 years. We'll take a break. Hopefully that'll be around 3:45. After we come back from the break, we will get to break into groups and really dive into some topics and strategic plans together. And then we'll come all back together and do some sharing of what we talked about and then close our session. So just to make sure everyone knows that this is a time when you should just take care of yourself during this long screen time we're going to have together, and make sure, you know, you're getting enough beverages and your pets are welcome and your children are welcome. And I think you feel free to use the chat. I think Sarah can help me answer questions that come up in the chat as the time goes, but it's also a great way to be adding to the conversation in a venue where, you know, given the amount of people we have in this group, we're not going to have a lot of full group conversation. So I think the chat function is really a great resource for that. So as Jake mentioned at the beginning of our time together this afternoon, the strategic plan for 2020 to 2030 was started in 2019. And the first step was teams of expert authors drafting briefs on over 50 topics. So these, I'm not sure whether everyone's been able to look at them, but they're 2 4-page short briefs, papers, sort of describing the state of certain topic areas, products, issues that relate to the food system in Vermont. And then starting in May, we've been holding stakeholder conversations in the survey. Today, we're going to dive into the recommendations, also known as the strategies that are part of the plan. We are also right in the middle of the end of putting together the strategic plan itself as a written document. We're getting things ready with the graphic designer so that it can go to the legislature and be released in this coming February. And then we'll really be ready for the action part of the plan, which will be enjoyable and really great, I think. So we wanted to take a minute just to say what the Farm to Plate Network is, because we're going to talk about what the big question we're going to discuss in our time together is, what should the network take action on? What can the network do? And so just want to be clear that the network is the organizations, well, there's over 300 organizations, Sarah shared with me, that are part of the Farm to Plate Network. So these, as you know, organizations that are part of the Vermont food system, and we are self-organized around our strategic plan and our strategic goals to take on projects that require collaboration and coordination. So today, when we're talking about the recommendations and the strategies for food security and food access, one thing we're going to be considering is, in these strategies, which are the ones that the network can really take a role in, and that won't happen unless the network does take a role, and which might not need the network. So the 2 briefs that we're going to discuss or use as the basis for our discussion are the ones on food security. And this slide here shows you the authors who contributed to the content of the food security brief. And then the other main brief we're going to be speaking about is the food access and farm viability brief. And these are the authors who work together to create the content of that brief. I'm just going to read the definition of food security and how we think about farm viability. My objective in the next several slides is to give you all just a sense of the background, what was considered as these documents were put together, because they do frame up the proposed work for the network and for the food system in the state in the coming decade. This is going to be a little more reading and my voice than I'm comfortable with, but I do think it's important that you all have a fairly robust idea of what went into these documents that we're going to ask you to be working with. So food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And in terms of farm viability, we have been using the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board's working definition, which includes these sentences that I've put on the slide. So I'll just read the first one. Commercially viable and successful farm and food enterprises tend to be the sole or an important contributor to the owner-operator's family income once past the startup stage, and they must be profitable in order to do so. So I think that's helpful because we talk a lot about farm viability, and this is, you know, the Farm Viability Network uses this definition. There's just some fun statistics. So we have a huge food system for a little state, over $11 billion in economic output, over 1 million acres of farmland, almost 7,000 farms. In 2018, of the 264,000 households in Vermont, almost 10% were food insecure, including 1 in 7 Vermont children lived in these households that were struggling with food insecurity. And our colleague Meredith Niles has estimated that in the first few months of 2020, COVID-19 pandemic, food insecurity rose 33%. So this is the situation in which our conversation occurs. So to build a robust and equitable food system, we must address both food access and farm viability simultaneously. For the health and well-being of all eaters, food access cannot be addressed by the charitable food system alone, but rather must be considered in relation to all the major market channels: retail, direct markets, and institutions. By increasing the ability of all eaters to access and use local food, we also benefit our farm businesses and the entire Vermont economy. So that excerpt from one of the briefs is the premise of how we see these topics as interconnected. Okay, so I don't know, and I can't see everybody, and I don't know if everybody has been able to look at part 1 of the plan and the briefs, but basically each brief, the way the structure that the authors followed is they summarized the current conditions of the subject. So in the case of food access and farm viability, the current conditions of that issue. Then they described some of the bottlenecks and gaps that were impeding progress forward on the goals that we might consider for that issue. Then talked about the opportunities that existed to improve things, and then made recommended strategies to solve the bottlenecks and take advantage of the opportunities. So I have just put into some slides some examples of the bottlenecks from these 2 briefs. Each brief gave 5 bottlenecks, so this is just a sampling of them. But I wanted you all to see some of the representative things that the authors and contributors to the briefs identified as primary gaps that our strategies will need to solve, just to give you a sense of the background here. Just looking at what time it is. Okay. So I'm not going to read all this because it would become eye glazing for you guys, but basically thinking about what the costs of production are related to reducing prices as a way to increase economic access. Talking about issues in the supply chain, which affect the availability and affordability of local foods. Talking about the resource limitations that Vermont residents may have. Talking about the socioeconomic structural factors that limit food security in the state. Thinking about national policies that leave us with an inequitable food system. thinking about how we don't have a comprehensive effort to plan for the impacts of climate emergencies and pandemic emergencies. Thinking about how when we talk about farm business viability, it's not necessarily related directly to a diversity of food production in terms of what we might need to eat. So those are some examples. And then I added this one, which is not from the food access or the food security brief, but is from part of, well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I can't remember what this is from, but I feel like this is an important framing thought for us as we're thinking about food security in our conversation this afternoon, is that we are going to face and are currently facing considerable disruption to the local food system and farm profitability and viability because of climate change. In addition, the significant impact of climate change on global food production and supply chains intensifies the need to increase the resilience of Vermont farming and local food systems and maintain our agricultural land base. Okay, so here we are in the recommendations that we are proposing as strategies for us to tackle together as a network or as individual organizations within the food system, directly related to food insecurity and access. So we're spending most of the rest of our time together on these recommendations. So here we can like really relax for a little while. And I'm just going to go through these. It's several more slides. But then what's going to happen is we'll do an exercise together. Well, first of all, we'll have some Q&A, some time for me to answer any questions or for other people to answer questions or address comments. And then we're going to do an exercise where we together look at these and prioritize them and make comments about them. We're going to use a piece of software that I'm going to invite you all to join, so this will be an interesting experiment, which I'm hoping will be fun. And so during that exercise, you'll have time to dive into these recommendations and really think about them, think about what they might mean for your organization, for your work, whether you agree with them. And then after our break, we're going to break into groups based on these recommendations and talk about how we might start working on them together or what we think the first steps are. So just keep that in mind as I click through these next slides and briefly summarize these are the 10 recommendations from the 2 briefs that I've been referencing. So this first one is, one more thing I should say is people who wrote the briefs were asked to think about recommendations that were for a policy audience and the legislature. So these are not recommendations that are supposed to be targeted toward agricultural businesses, but for a policy and funding audience. So this one is fund a research project to fully understand household food insecurity in Vermont and how to invest in its elimination. And then it goes into some detail there. And this one, it recommends that we make a Vermont food security plan, which would work alongside the Farm to Plate strategic plan and would be inspired by community-based responses and would involve things that are usually considered part of the food system, but also things that are often considered like slightly outside, like transportation and the siting of grocery stores and housing. This one is a little bit of a subset of the last one. So it's integrating food security into existing planning systems. So thinking about town plans, state plans, and integrating food security into those. This one is about looking at the existing solutions for food insecurity, which we know work, and investing more in these. This one is about creating an aggregation and sales system that could serve the charitable food system as well as other market channels. This one asks the legislature to create a local food access funding program to stabilize funding for programs that connect local farms and Vermont residents who are experiencing food insecurity. This one suggests that the legislature funds a position that would be shared across the gleaning programs in the state. This one suggests that the legislature gives an appropriation to enable charitable food organizations to buy directly from Vermont producers. This one suggests more coordination between social service providers and people who deliver food access programs. Okay. That was all of them. I thought that was going to go on forever, but it didn't really go that bad, I hope. All right, now is the time that I've zipped through these briefs and we're setting ourselves up for diving into those recommendations, thinking about what we think about them, how we might want to work on them. So I welcome questions about the briefs, the process of the plan, comments. I can't see the chat. Hold on. What's this? Oh, that's the chat. Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Does anyone have any questions or comments they want to share with the group or any clarification needed? Oh, Jonathan, good question. Do I have a slide with the summary of all the recommendations to compare side by side? I do not, but the exercise that we're going to do next, you kind of will be able to see that. Okay, not sure where to raise a hand.
So you would raise your hand. I believe it's, I'm not positive since my screen looks a little different as the host, but I believe it's by your own name in the participants list. So if you open the participants list, you have options when you hover over your own name. That said, Lisa, working in the chat works too. Would you like to ask a question? You can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Sarah. Just curious to hear, in terms of these recommendations, when will they start sort of being actionable? Is that something we're going to talk about in the session?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it, Lisa. I think speaking for myself personally, I'm excited to continue working on the ones that already have roots that are sprouting, and I think that's part of what we're going to talk about. And when we break into groups, is what's already underway on this. Does the network going to play a role in furthering an item? Sarah Jackson has asked, can you elaborate on the recommendation about charitable food organizations buying locally? So this is the recommendation. Currently, some of the charitable food organizations in the state do purchase directly from Vermont producers. So this is a recommendation that the legislature support an ongoing effort for that to occur. And I would welcome anyone who this is from the Food Access Farm Viability brief. I welcome anyone who worked on that brief who's on the call to add any further detail to that.
I worked on that brief, and if anyone from the food bank is on the call and wants to jump in, we would welcome that as well, because the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program is one of the prime examples of this type of program that we would like to have additional funding for. So I don't know if anyone from the food bank is on the call, so I don't speak on your behalf about what that program is. Going once. All right, so I'm going to speak briefly about that, which is that the Vermont Food Bank does have a program that so when they purchase food to distribute to their partner food shelves, they can purchase directly from Vermont farmers. And then they also have an aspect of that program to provide mini grants to individual food shelves to buy smaller amounts of food from farmers right in their community. So that's a really good example of a program that already exists as a pilot phase and is working to become fully funded. And this recommendation is asking for regular funding to fund that and comparable programs for the sake of both the charitable food organization and for the additional support and revenue that it provides to local farmers. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Great.
Looks like she says, great. Anna Paritsky says she can speak about how Hope uses similar funds. Anna, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. So Hope does through small grants and through actually with the start of the pandemic, we've been seeing increased donations specifically for our local food programs, which has been wonderful. And a lot of that funds we've used to support farms that we've already been working with through our gleaning program. So on top of maybe going and picking up and gleaning food from those farms, we can also, buy 50 pounds of onions for the holidays or 400 pounds of sweet potatoes, I think we just brought in. So it's really great because it allows us to support the farms that have already been supporting us. And it's also allowed us to sort of branch out and make connections with farms relationships with in the past. But when we can open that door by saying, hey, we would love to buy produce from you and maybe work on gleaning in the future, I think that's sort of been a great foot in the door, rather than showing up on their doorstep and asking if you can just take their food waste from them.
Thank you, Anna. Keegan Harris has asked a question about why in the aggregation and sales system recommendation, hold on, let me navigate back to it. Sorry, you guys, you are going to be dealing with, I don't know how to look at my slide deck and the slide. Okay, here we go. So this is the, Keegan's question relates to this recommendation, and Keegan wants to know why the potential partnership with the Vermont Department of Corrections. Is someone from Salvation Farms on who could address this question for Keegan?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Greta, thank you.
Salvation Farms. Salvation Farms has had a relationship historically with the Department.
Greta, you're very quiet. Is there a way you can get a little bit closer to your microphone?
Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Historically, Salvation Farms has had a relationship with the Department of Corrections, longstanding in regards to minimal processing of produce, and it also is seen as a workforce development solution. So providing wraparound workforce development services for inmates in the Department of Corrections and working with partners in the community to promote second chance hiring. So Salvation Farms sees that as a great opportunity to build an employable workforce, build food sector skills, and have an opportunity to provide minimal processing that wouldn't otherwise be available. So I believe Teresa is also an author on this brief, and that's likely where that came from.
Yes, she is, and that's why I asked. Yeah, if anyone from Salvation Farms was on here.
Thanks,
you.
Greta. And I'll just add really quickly that from my understanding from the conversations with Teresa in the process of writing this brief is that that example of potential partners like Salvation Farms and Department of Corrections was held up as the potential partners because there has already been work underway to actually develop what this model would look like. So the next step that's needed is the funding of the pilot program to run it.
Okay, so this is great. Travis is saying the Interrail Center supplying the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program and says it works well. And Lisa is saying, oh, great suggestion about adding folks in with the funding, adding more people who could benefit from the funding. This is for the I don't know exactly which recommendation. Lisa, Lisa's comment is a great example of, if you have thoughts like that and you want to add them, we will, of course, be saving the chat. So great just to put suggestions in as well. Thank you, Lisa, for leading the way on that. Any other questions, or is everything so clear in terms of how everything came about? And okay. Social, okay. To work with housing coalitions, wondering what kind of opportunity there could be to work with housing coalitions to support every Vermonter to having adequate kitchen supplies. Well, yeah, that might be a really great tactic in meeting one of our recommendations. Yeah. Oh, I can see Keegan's hand up. Is that what that is?
That is. Does that
Awesome.
mean you're calling on me?
I am calling on you, yes.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask a follow-up question because I think I'm still confused. Either about what that recommendation is with the prison system. So I'm a little confused about the connection between workforce development and a sales aggregation system, or rather aggregation and sales system. And I'm also curious about what workforce development means, not being super familiar with the DOC. And also what minimal processing means and how those things are connected. Can you help me out?
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, Greta.
minimal processing of raw produce and agricultural products. So the relationship with Salvation Farms historically has been that we've set up workforce development programs within the Department of Corrections and provided skill training around processing, washing, packing, and either canning, freezing, or drying food products that can then be sold in multiple market channels, including the charitable food system, but primarily institutional and other market channels, to then raise the capital to fund that program on the back end. So building the skills while folks are incarcerated, providing food service skill building, and then wraparound services so that after incarceration, they can have employable or long-term employment in the food system. Does that answer your question?
I think it answers some, just to be clear. So the idea is that prisoners are working, doing food prep, that food is then being sold in order to fund the, what's it funding? I'm sorry.
I am relatively new to Salvation Farms, and this program is not currently in existence, but my understanding is that it's funding the cost of the facilities and running the program. And the produce that we're talking about is gleaned produce from farms here locally.
Got it. Still a little unclear about the connection to sales and the aggregation and sales part. But I think that's a little bit of a clearer picture. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greta. Okay. Are there any explicit plans to advocate for mandatory living wages in the food accessibility and farm labor realm? So in terms of, I can answer the question like, is this a recommendation that came out of the briefs process? The briefs did not tackle minimum wage as a central topic, but I don't know if that's your question. In terms of what explicit plans there are in the state in general to advocate for mandatory living wages, I can't address that. I'm not sure, Joanna, if that was your question specifically. Maybe someone else could address that a little bit.
I can speak to that briefly. That livable wages is discussed in more depth in the labor brief than in the food access briefs, although it's certainly mentioned as a really important part of food access as well. There's not a specific recommendation around advocating for an increase in that, and part of the reason that gets into some of the tactic questions around all of these recommendations relate to the fact that the farm to plate network doesn't usually advocate as a network for specific things, because many of the organizations that make up the network aren't legally allowed to engage in policy advocacy per se. So there are some nuances there in terms of which tactics the network is pursuing as a network versus providing the common ground for organizations to discuss the strategy and then advocate for it on their own. So that, but yeah, sorry, I don't have any more detailed information on recommendations, but it is discussed a lot more in the labor brief, Johanna.
Yeah, which isn't out yet. All right, thank you, everybody. So what I'm going to try to do right now, hopefully successfully, are you guys ready for some software fun? So what we're going to try to do is, okay, hold on, wait. I'm going to give you, Sarah's going to drop into the chat a link that's going to take you to this software here that's called GroupMap. So what you'll have to do, oh, it's in the new farm to plate. I don't know what that means. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this software program to together determine what out of the recommendations that I've shown are the highest priority for the network action. So we'll do this ranking, and then we'll take our break, and then we'll have a good amount of time to break into groups and dive in. So what you're going to do here is, Sarah, you're going to click on the link that, oh, people have already figured it out. Okay, good. I see people figuring it out. So you click on the link that Sarah put in the chat. You have to enter your email, and then you'll be in this screen. You should be seeing the screen that I'm showing on your own screen. And if you're not, you might have to click up here where my cursor is, where it says position individually. Oh, it says the link is invalid. Okay, hold on. Okay, let me try. Ready? Is that one going to work? Oh, you guys, if this doesn't work, it's going to be like the biggest fail ever. Okay, people are getting in. Take off the slash at the end. Yay! Okay, happiness. All right, let me show you how this works. So over here, you have all the recommendations. And they're on basically like little Post-its. And if you click on the Post-it, you can see that there's this short thing. And then here, is everyone seeing my screen? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing that. Okay. You see the whole brief, the whole recommendation here in the description. So you're going to do a couple things with these. First of all, you can see I've made these axes, and you get to decide where on the axis is this recommendation toward least important for Vermont or most important for Vermont. And then you have the network is definitely the place where this could be tackled. Collaboration across organizations is going to be how we're going to tackle this, or probably one organization or two organizations could do it without the whole network getting involved. So you'll just decide where. I'm just going to randomly put this one here, and you're doing this on your own. You're in your position individually setting here. So this is a time where you can start looking at the recommendations and reading them, kind of absorbing them in your own time without having to look at my PowerPoint. Another thing you can do down here in the comment, you can add a comment. And here, I would love it. It was super helpful if you guys could say like, you can make comments that are either like, something's already going on about this that you should know, like universal meals are already happening in the state now. So that might be one type of thing. You could say that'd be your comment, or you could say like another thing that would be really helpful, and this could be a moment for you to do it, is to say, my organization wants to work on this. And I guess you'd have to put your organization. Then you can click out, and then you can do the next one, fund the research project. So we're all doing this separately, and then if all goes well, now that we're all in there, when in a few minutes, when we've all had time to do this, we'll look at the results, and the machine will just make it so that it's averaged everything we've decided, and then we'll get to look, and we'll also have some great record that we're starting about, like, here are the resources that already are moving forward on this, and really importantly, like, these are people who might want to work on this as we tackle this as part of the strategic plan. So let's carry forward. Is anyone, if anyone's not in yet or has any questions, either unmute yourself or just send a note in the chat. Oh, I'm going to, what am I doing? This. Okay, Monica. All right. Jenny has made a good point that you can't say everything is the most important and should be tackled by the network. I mean, you could, but the point is to have some discernment.
Least important does not mean not important. This is relative ranking here.
Now, if you want, you can put in the comment that you think something is not important. So you guys, what was the difference when it stopped asking you for the code? It was not adding a backslash at the end? That's what someone seems to have said, right? Okay, how much time do we have? Let's take 5 minutes. I mean, we can take more than that, but that might be enough. Thank you, everyone, for this grand experiment. If you're, I have no idea how long this is taking everyone, whether it's going quickly or slowly. If you're someone where it's gone really quickly and you're just chilling right now, this could also be a time where if you have suggestions for steps that could be taken or anything else you want to say about the recommendations, really feel free to use those comments. How's it going? I can only see like 6 people. Is this working out? Okay, about halfway. Nice. Thank you, Joe. Okay, slow going. Okay. Do you click position individually when you're finished? You should position individually is just the step in the process that we're in. So if you look, this is just the step we're in, and I think I've locked everyone into that step. And then when everyone's pretty much done, we'll look at results together. So you don't have to click anything, I believe. Jenny's asking me privately about the software, and so I'm just going to tell everyone that this, she's asking, was it free? There's a trial version, but this, with the amount of people that we were expecting in this conversation, it's not. I did have to pay for a month of membership, I guess. I like it because it makes all our voices equal. Oh, Graham can't drag the items. Let's see. Graham, does your screen look like this one that I'm sharing still? Hmm. Graham, I don't know why that's happening. That's mysterious. Is everyone else able to move the tabs around? Graham is saying he can't move the items from left to right. I don't know why that is. I'm sorry, Graham. Okay, is anyone not done at all? Besides poor Graham. Okay, great. Thank you, Anna. Oh no, Luna. Oh no.
So
Christine's question.
I did notice on mine, it lets me drag them off the edge of the screen, unfortunately. So I think that's probably what happens if you try to pull it too far into the corner. It's dragging off the edge of the screen.
Oh, like you just dumped it all the way out.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So I mean, so I would guess that that's probably still there, just out of sight. So it's like way beyond the boundaries of the scale, which means it would still, if it's still there, it would still get calculated into the group results. I would guess that that's what's happening. So I think those will still be calculated to the results, even if they're past the boundaries on your own screen. Everyone is very over enthusiastic, apparently, with your pushing the boundaries of the scale.
Yeah, I'm curious, did everyone's stuff fall off of like the least important, or this was so important that you just pushed it all the way off the. All right, should we look at the results? Let's try it. Okay. Oh, look, I can bring you to the results step. All right, you guys, this is what we ended up with. This is funny. Okay, so I guess in some ways, this is very positive, which is that this whole process of creating these recommendations with a team of author contributors, we did not end up with any recommendation that was unimportant for Vermont. So that is really wonderful. I'm going to assume that everyone's things that were off the screen got there. Is anyone surprised by this prioritization and how clumped everything is? Any observations about this process? I am sharing my screen. Is it not working? Let me try again.
Yeah.
All right, can you see my group map item? Great, thank you. So I don't know if there are people who can't see, who are not, who are like on their phone or something. So I'll just read. I'll read a little, that the Make a Vermont Food Security Plan is highest on network as a place to tackle, and most important to Vermont is the invest in existing solutions for food insecurity, which have been effective. Also up there is the creating a local food access funding program, and social service providers and food access programs working cooperatively. Betsy says, I like the mapping. Lost notes were a problem. Yes. I've never seen that happen, so sorry about that, friends. Christine is saying, I'm a bit surprised by how many strategies folks put as the role of the network rather than partnerships or coalitions of members of the network. Christine, what's your distinction there? Rather than saying like it's just a coalition of a few organizations outside of the network structure,
Yeah,
saying that it's going to happen within the network.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was thinking, that there's the network is a big entity and there with a small staff. And so thinking about the members of the network as carrying a lot of these things together or individually or in partnership or coalition, as opposed to the whole network doing it as a whole.
Yeah, I think that when the plan comes out, there's going to be a time of reconfiguring the network structure. So it might be that, network groups will better serve some of these strategies that are coming out with in the strategic plan. Sarah might be able to put that a little better than I can.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so like Becca said, we will be reworking the network, and I get one of the One of the things that's still up in there is will we even have the same types of groups as we have had? Like definitely the topics for the groups will be changing, but it might also be different types of groups rather than the current structure of working groups, cross-cutting teams, and then sometimes task forces. So I think all of that, that decision-making will depend on exactly these types of conversations. Like, is there a distinction between coalitions of network members versus a network project and that sort of thing? So I think it's an important distinction, and we don't know yet what that will look like as the new network structure. But I agree with you, Christine. I actually, I also had rated some of them a lot lower on the network access than the average ended up being. So I was a bit surprised by that as well.
It might be a little deceiving too, because the network access is the shorter one. I don't know. Okay. So what's going to happen next? This is, I think, really useful. You know, hoping that it's going to be useful for all of us as we move forward on these topics as collaborators. So we're going to take a break. So but I need you to know what's going to happen when we come back, which is going to be at 4 o'clock. Sorry, distracted by chat items. Okay, so what we're going to do when we come back at 4 o'clock is break into groups to discuss each recommendation, one recommendation each in the groups. So these are the recommendations, and they'll be the breakout groups that we come into, you know, a few minutes after we get back together. And one thing that we that I recently learned from a colleague is that the new version of Zoom allows you to choose your own breakout room, which is exciting. And not only, we were testing it this morning, not only can you choose your own breakout room, but if you get into breakout room 1 and then you rethink it and you want to leave and go to breakout room 3, you can do that. So if you have the ability during the break to follow these instructions that I'm showing about, basically it's like reinstalling Zoom. I was very confused by it myself when I approached it. Because it's not an update, it's like you reinstall, then that new version will enable you to select your own breakout room. And if you don't end up being able to do that, that's fine. We have a way to move you into rooms. Can I chat the Zoom link? Yes. No. Okay, hold on. PowerPoint chaos. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so then I think that's it. Is there any questions or comments at this point? Sarah, is there anything I've forgotten?
Not at this point, I don't think.
But there might be sometime soon. Is that what you're saying? Great. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. So we're taking a 15-minute break and we'll be back at 4. Can I lead the slide with the group's briefs? Yes. Nope, wrong direction. So you can think about these. And you also have the, if you're still in the group map, that's also a way you can look and just think more about the recommendations and which ones you're going to want to take. So we'll start hanging out again at 4. Thank you, everybody.
the profit margin is incredibly low. It often quite negative. That's why right now we're not handling surplus crops to the degree that we could for markets. So that's also by looking at this creative option or lever with within the state, which is these individuals who are held in our state's custody. We could either be providing them opportunities to engage in productive, purposeful activity that benefits the communities in which they're from and often their families. Plus, it could also feed them and their fellow incarcerated, I don't want to say housemates, I suppose. So we're looking at this as like, how can we raise more boats by utilizing a resource that gives people positive opportunities and hopefully transitions into their community. And I think the other thing is by engaging this potential labor source and the physical resources of corrections, we can also start to reduce the state's reliance on cheap food from out of state, both to feed in the prison system, as well as some of these other charitable and institutional food sites around Vermont. I don't know if that answers it at all.
Teresa, thank you for that. I think we'll probably wrap that up so we can keep going with the agenda. But Teresa, would you be willing to put your email in the chat? So if anyone has further questions, they can reach out to you and hear more.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, like, to the point of being concerned of exploitation, I worked directly with 50 different inmates while piloting some of this, and it was voluntary for them to be involved. And many of them felt quite proud of the work that they did and felt purposeful. So I think we need to realize that people in jail are people too, that deserve to have opportunities.
Thanks for popping in, Teresa. I really appreciate it. Okay, I hope everyone had a good break. We are going to go into breakouts. So if you downloaded the Zoom installer, you will be able to self-choose, and we'll go into how that works because it was a little confusing earlier. And if you don't have the version, that's fine. What you're going to do is pick your breakout group and see what the number of the breakout group is. I think, Sarah, is that how you set it up for yourself?
Yes. So when I hit, I can just go ahead and open the rooms now so that you can see. So I'll hit open the rooms, and they each have a number and a couple of words. I can't make the names very long, so it's not the full recommendation, but the numbers correspond with the slide, and there's a couple of keywords there to help you make that connection as well.
Okay. So we're going to have about 45 minutes for this actual conversation in small groups. So you'll need, I know that everyone has a lot of experience being in meetings and facilitating and taking notes. So I know everyone's going to do great. I would love it if your group could designate a note taker who will send me the notes afterwards. We are going to do a report out, but hopefully it'll be a really robust conversation. So we want the things that you were able to collectively source to be captured. And those notes could be in Word or Google Doc, whatever it might be. So the questions that you're going to work with with the recommendation, the one recommendation you'll be working on is, what role will the network play here? Where do we start? What is happening that people might need to know about or could provide resources, support collaboration? How will racial equity be addressed within this recommendation and strategy? Who else needs to be at the table? Just start building out this strategy and how it's going to start, how the network's going to be involved, and really diving into that. It's kind of like a working conversation about and anything that comes up that you think might make it possible for us to tackle these. So I just realized that we might not have all the recommendations in a way that you guys can look at them. Is that one piece that we forgot? Okay, Sarah, I think I have a way to fix this. So if you could talk about the breakout groups for a second, and I will figure that part out.
I can actually popped the recommendations in the chat as well, where I just put well, this is the shortened version, not the full version. But that's the short version. So everything that's going in the chat now, you should still see once you go into breakout rooms. So you'll still have the questions and the text of the recommendations. Becca, you might want to still figure out a way to get the longer version of the recommendations.
Yeah,
to people.
I'll be able to do that in just a sec.
So yeah, if those of you with the new Zoom can go into choose your own breakout room. If any of you don't have the new Zoom yet, just hang tight. If you already know you don't have the new Zoom, send me a chat telling you what room you want to go into. If you're trying to get into a room and it's not working for some reason, you'll end up just staying in this room, and eventually I'll get to moving you into a room as well.
Okay, so all the recommendations in full are now in the chat on that Google link. All right, so Sarah, did you open the breakout rooms?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to do this, but if you know how to do it, then no worries. You can just carry on. So hold on just one sec. Soon you will all be magical Zoom professionals in this new powerful Zoom moment. Except that now I don't know where my controls are. Sorry. Doop. Wait, so where are my controls then? I'm being really helpful. Okay, hold on.
Oh, you know, Becca, I don't think it will work like that anyway, because I think when you screen share, we don't get to see your Zoom controls. We just get to see what's on your desktop. So if you're looking for where to join the breakout room, it's on the bottom bar of your screen. If you have the chat bar open on the side, it might be under the little ellipsis that says more, but it should be somewhere on that bar. It says breakout rooms. It's got a little 4 square symbol. Click on that, and then it should give you the options and let you go into one.
But in order to go into one, and this messed me up earlier, like I'm looking at the breakout room window, and it says like aggregation pilot 1, you have to hover over the number that's in blue next to the room, and then it'll say join.
And if any of you can't do that for whatever reason, shoot me a message in the chat and I will put you in. Yep. Sure.
Hey, this is Travis. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, I had to be on a phone call for a minute.
Yeah.
What's the quick way to get into one of the chat rooms?
The quickest way at this point is just tell me which one you can want to be in, and I can send you in there.
How about the one that had eliminating food insecurity in Vermont? Sort of fund a research project to eliminate food insecurity.
The research project. Okay. Yep.
I thought that was a compelling piece of that recommendation.
Was that the fund a research project to fully understand food insecurity and how to invest in its elimination?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me. All right. Yep. Hold on, Julie and Charlotte. Jenny and Nancy, are you there? Do you need to be put somewhere?
Oh, I just got up like forever to finally get in. Yes.
Where do you want to be?
Hold on, I had to like restart my computer, so I have to pull up all my tabs again. I don't know, is there a group that needs somebody?
No. I mean, not to the extent that it should determine your choice.
Then why don't you put me in the like social service agency one?
Okay, great.
Hey, Sarah, are you
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
I had the wrong number. Could you put me in the funding pilot aggregation one?
So I can. I see that Teresa was there to chat with anyone more about that, but she was the only one and she just left probably because she thought no one else was joining her.
Okay. Then
So
I
you would
would
be the only
do,
one there now.
okay, Vermonters feeding Vermonters. I forget what all
Yeah.
the other language was there.
Okay, yeah, that was the funding programs was what was meant to, one of the options would be to fund programs like Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. So I'll put you in
Thank
that one. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Hey, Sarah, I see you just joined. Everyone is in breakout groups. If you want to be, I don't know if you've been, I don't know if you saw the portion of the presentation that laid out what those groups are. Or if you just got here.
Yeah, thanks for I was afraid of that. So I'll just hop out and go back to my other session.
Okay, if you want, I mean, if we did just go into breakout groups, if you want to join one.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great if that's easy.
Yeah, the breakout groups are actually, they're not random. They're based on the different recommendations from the brief. So I will put that in the chat briefly, and if you just want to pick one of those, I can send you.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's the abbreviated version, so there's longer text for that, but.
Okay. How about the integrate food security into existing planning systems with transparent public?
There's actually no one in that room, sadly, because that's actually the one I would have joined.
Okay, how about the last one then, the Vermont Food Security Plan?
Okay, yep, I will put you in there.
Great, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem.
Or I don't remember what else, but transportation is another thing. So I don't know if that would go in this recommendation, but maybe appropriating some funding towards looking at that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just sort of generally addressing barriers to participating in any of these programs. Cool.
I also think, I don't know if this falls specifically under the purview of this specific recommendation, but coming up with a way that people who use their EBT cards can pay in advance for curbside pickup and stuff like that. Because to my knowledge, there's no way we need to pay ahead. And that's difficult because if you yourself are on 3 squares and you are immune compromised or for whatever reason don't feel comfortable going into a grocery store or going to a farmer's market, they may have curbside available, but if you can't pay in advance, that may not be an option for you. And I think that's really basically because you're on 3 squares, you have to put yourself more at risk by actually going in and shopping. And if that's what if you're fine with that, then fine. But if you're not, that's kind of difficult, I think. I don't know if that falls under this specific point.
I think that's a huge issue right now, but unfortunately, I think it's a little bit bigger than the state of Vermont. It's because it's a federal program. My understanding is that the federal government is working with a number of states, and I think even Vermont has participated in a small pilot to do online EBT, but they have to use these massive nationwide retailers like Walmart. And so you can, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Ivy, you can speak to that from Hunger Free. I'm not sure. I don't want to spread false rumors, but.
Yeah, so it is a pilot program, and in the state of Vermont, the two kind of corporations where folks can use their EBT dollars are Walmart and Amazon Pantry. And when this initial pilot was announced, it was accessible for more local retailers to participate, but there was a huge barrier on the technology side, and the knowledge and technology was not at the level that this program was requiring folks to be at. So it was in theory available, but not accessible, and really not necessarily the fault of local retailers. It was, but I know there are efforts to make those programs available at more local retailers, but that's as much as I know. Mm-hmm. I do know there are some markets this fall, and I think there are a couple this winter who are offering curbside pickup for folks using their EBT card and Crop Cash, but there is no option to pay in advance, that's right. So folks would have to interact with someone. So that is, I I would just underscore that, Callie.
Did anyone speak to Vermonters Feeding Vermonters yet?
What's your question about it, Julie?
Excuse me?
What's the question about?
Did anyone speak to it in favor of it or describe it in this breakout session yet? I have some input.
No, we haven't gotten there yet, and I think there's another recommendation that is specific to that request, but I think they definitely intersect and overlap with this program. I think this program, and Sarah Danley, maybe jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but this one is about supporting those programs to expand access with EBT users in particular. And then I think there's another one about Vermonters Feeding Vermonters and how that's working, but there's a ton of overlap, and I'd like to hear what your impressions are.
Oh, you know what? I think that we might have had a combination of the recommendations for the slide on.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm getting confused.
I think I'm also just confused because at some points in the plan development process, Vermonters Feeding Vermonters has been under the same recommendation around a funding program, and at other points it's been separated out. So it looks like the breakout slide included that under this one.
Cool. Okay.
Even though it was presented as a separate recommendation in the slideshow. So I apologize for the confusion, everyone.
That's all right. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, Julie.
Yeah, well, I coordinated Vermonters Feeding Vermonters for Fairfield Food Shelf this summer into the fall. And I just thought it was a really good way for food shelves to connect directly with farmers. It also, in addition to the purchased food that we got from farms, we also got a lot of donated food. So we probably tripled what we took in and were able to give out. It was a very positive relationship with the guests to have the variety of foods offered through Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. It just seemed like there just were a lot of connections made, and it's really worth supporting and to expand it.
That's really great to hear. Really, I think that's the intention behind it, and it's nice to hear it actually worked out that way.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun for me.
Did you get any feedback from the producers that you purchased from? Like, was it viable and valuable for them too?
Yes, it was. In addition to taking their excess foods, it also allowed them to market foods that maybe they didn't have a market for in other ways. I think they were really pleased with it, and that we came to their door to pick up the food. So there was very little effort on their part to provide us with food.
Yeah.
So it was good.
So I'm gonna jump back to the main, sorry for ducking in and out. I'm got to jump back to the main room because there's someone else who needs to be sent to a breakout room, but glad I could pop in.
Do you know how much time we have left, Sarah?
We go until 2:45, so 15 more minutes.
Okay, great.
And I'll send a 10-minute warning.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So Helen, you're the.
Hey, Mariah, you're back.
I made it.
Hey. Ooh. Everyone's in breakout rooms, but there's still a good 15 minutes left. So if you want to go, I can send you into one.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to check out the food system plan group.
Great.
The planner in me is just like so delighted.
Yes, it's great. And there's also a recommendation on incorporating food access into existing planning, which sadly there's no one in that breakout room. But I think that's probably just the those folks with planning tendencies all join the food security plan one, so I'll send you in there.
Really awesome.
Great. Did you get the invite? Oh,
some solutions that are specific to our area, and then try to figure out how we can work with partners to help us address the issues.
Be curious as to what was the process for your study? I mean, I'm sure that's a big question, obviously, but I don't know if you can briefly just say, like,
sure.
you utilize the storytelling aspect of it. That sounds.
No, well, I would have loved to have done it that way, but we had a short period of time in which we had our students available, our researchers available. So we developed a set of questions. Some of it was based on a USDA study that had been done on local food security many years ago, and they have a toolkit that's online. And we altered the questions a little bit to suit our community a little better. And we did polls and or surveys rather, and then we did individual conversations with people that were identified by community partners that work with different agencies and organizations. So we did do some storytelling in that sense.
I want to just add in that I had been involved with an organization out of Montpelier called Community Engagement Lab that, among other things, uses the arts to potentially, in a way, do research, actually, to engage communities in getting at challenges like this in ways that take them out of their usual analytical thinking through a joint, very carefully constructed creative project. So I just throw that out there as maybe being an interesting component to a research effort that can involve all, you know, a broad spectrum of participants from a community, getting at like the deeper issues that sometimes research, it's challenging to really surface those.
I'm curious with how long does this small group, the breakout group, have for this conversation?
So you have until 4:45. So I'm about to send a 10-minute warning, and sorry for popping in and back out again, but I see someone else just came into the main room unassigned, so I have to head over there to send them off to breakout.
Well, I was just wondering if the questions in the chat of like, what role does the network play here? Like,
something that I was introduced to by my coworker at Vital Communities, Beth Roy, is on the call, who loves a nice Jamboard. So I don't know, obviously I don't know how many of you have used a Google Jamboard. And please hold, because I am having a technical problem where I've lost my Jamboard browser tab. Talk amongst yourselves, hold on.
Becca, I have the link pulled up if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
Okay.
put in the chat for
Yeah,
everyone?
can you put the link in the chat? So this is just it's a Google software. So if you guys click through, we'll all end up on this on this Jamboard, which basically, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So this is just a giant Post-it, which I can make smaller. So what you guys can do, this is going to be a report out, is just like, what do you want folks to know that your group discussed? Like, what was exciting? What was inspiring? What is going to happen? What did you decide? And you can just make a sticky note and add your little sticky note. That's my exciting sticky note I just made. And just add it to the Jamboard. You could also doodle or erase someone's doodle. So I can erase my sticky note. So I'm excited to, maybe I can't erase my sticky note. Okay. This makes sense to everyone as a way to go. And if anyone can't stand doing it this way, you're welcome to just unmute and share verbally something that was really great about your discussion. Maybe everyone solved the problem they were discussing in their group and you want to tell us how you solved the issue of food security or food access with farm viability.
And if anyone's having trouble getting onto the Jamboard and wants to put comments in the chat, I can attempt to make sticky notes for you, although I've never done this myself either. So keyword attempt.
Oh, I want to show you guys something else too. I don't know. So when someone's sharing their screen, you can click on this annotate thing. Yay for all Becca's fun technology. And then you can like do things with your annotation just on this window. Like my favorite is to make little heart stamps. But you can also add text boxes or arrows. It's just fun Zoom extravaganza. Yeah, what's the definition of Social Security? Here, I'm moving these two because they were on top of each other. Yeah, I love that some people are saying like they need to they have questions that would help them with moving forward on these topics, or are there things that we didn't talk about that are, or that weren't in the recommendations that we've been looking at, or the concern might be overlooked in the strategic plan? Are there people outside the food system that you talked about who need to be brought in for conversations? I wonder if I can. Did anyone hear about an exciting project they didn't know about that's happening with a fellow organization?
This is really mesmerizing watching all of this awesome
I know, I'm kind of moving
to the
around
board.
too. This is great.
Just a quick note on I see the sticky note about Bi-State Primary Care Association, their work on primary care offices and food access programming. They're actually a part of the Farm to Plate Health cross-cutting team and are working closely with that team in a lot of their work. So if you're excited to hear about that and interested in more about how that's intersecting with Farm to Plate already, I'm happy to talk more about that, or I can put you in contact with the chairs of the health cross-cutting team.
Someone's drawing a carrot. I love you. These are all really great. Great. No, someone's drawing a turnip. Amazing. Great. Is there anything anyone wants to share verbally, out loud with anyone? Any remaining questions that came up or things we should talk about? This has been really fun to facilitate this session, but I have completely lost my notes. Okay, it's this. Here we go. I miss being in person with everybody, having things to actually stick on. All right. Also,
Lisa,
normally at the gathering, we have it at around this time, we end up with a giant cheese buffet.
everyone here is drawing vegetables though, not cheese. Lisa, to your question about another meeting to talk about the recommendations, the feedback we're getting from the breakout sessions today will help inform the new network structure, and then the new network structure will be revisiting recommendations again, probably new ideas by then, moving some of them forward. So that's sort of like the game plan from here on out. So it's definitely not by any means the last meeting to talk about these recommendations.
And to start acting on them. All right, I can tell that the meat of our meeting and the cheese of our meeting is drawing to a close. Sarah, I think you have some host announcements for everybody, if I'm correct.
I believe my host announcement is just that we are now going back to the full gathering group briefly for the end of the day to hear brief report outs from different breakout sessions. And unlike this morning, so this morning we were in the webinar mode just so we could highlight the panel, but this will be a full group one. So it will also be your chance to sort of see everyone who's here at the gathering, which is very exciting. And you should have that link in your agenda, but I'm also about to pop it into the chat. I don't know whether you can just click the link in the chat or whether you have to copy it, close out of this Zoom meeting, and then go into the next one. But that is
everyone. Thank you for joining this conversation, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you on food security, on food access, and on farm viability. So thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for being my brave tech assistant and
adventure,
as always.